He's known as the most wanted man in Philadelphia, accused of brutally murdering his ex-girlfriend and leaving her in a shallow grave. The horrific case initially unfolded last month when a woman's body was found in a shallow grave in a park in Philadelphia on November 7th. Her body was reportedly covered in twigs and leaves. Investigators identified the victim as 29-year-old Melody Rivera. Melody was reported missing about a week before her body was discovered. According to police, she was last seen alive on Halloween, at first with a friend until someone unexpected showed up. In a report by the Philadelphia Inquirer, Melody was driving with her friend when she was attacked by her ex-boyfriend, 29-year-old Geovanni Otero. Otero allegedly threw Melody's friend out of the car, then drove off with Melody. Police later found the car abandoned days later. While her body was discovered on November 7th, investigators believe she was likely killed on November 1st. Police initially considered him to be a person of interest, and they wanted to question him after learning the two were involved in a dispute around the time Melody went missing. According to the report by the Philadelphia Inquirer, Melody's family said he had been harassing and threatening her for weeks before she went missing on Halloween. So when police wanted to talk to him, they were waiting to speak with him for weeks, but they never got a chance. Then more shocking details were released. Authorities learned Melody had been bludgeoned to death and her death was ruled a homicide by violence. But when the medical examiner ruled on the cause of death, while he initially faced an abuse of corpse charge, his charges were upgraded to murder. Police discovered he hadn't checked in with his parole officer and hadn't been seen since. Police say his criminal history was lengthy and can be traced back to when he was just 12 years old. Otero served time on drug and gun charges in 2015, but he also served time in 2018 after being convicted of illegal gun possession, where he was sentenced to 3.5 years to 8 years in jail. And right before Melody's murder, he had just recently been released. It's unclear where Otero is, but authorities are now calling him the most wanted man in Philadelphia. But for Melody's family, their life has forever been changed. Melody's 11-year-old son now has to grow up without his mother, and while her family was able to properly lay her to rest, they hope her killer will be found. Melody's sister Martha Fred told local station WPVI she didn't deserve this, especially by someone who supposedly loved her. The case even caught the attention of the U.S. Marshals. U.S. Marshals say Otero also goes by the alias Gozer. They say he has black hair, brown eyes, tattoos covering both hands, and a dagger behind his left ear. They are offering a reward of $5,000 for any information leading to an arrest. So we have a lot to break down in this case, so let's bring on retired Detective Commander of Chicago PD, Will Spielar. Will, thank you so much for joining me. I want to get your take on the case overall. A woman who initially went missing is discovered dead in a shallow grave, and authorities believe her ex-boyfriend is responsible. What's your reaction, and how often in your experience have you seen a case like this?
Far too many times in my experience. This is a looks like an example of a domestic violence situation that continued to get more and more physical, more and more violent. It escalated to the point where he killed her. Now, obviously, it took the authorities a little bit of time to build a case to make a warrant for murder on this person, but you just see it all too often. It's just an escalating domestic violence situation that ends in, unfortunately, in murder.
And what the suspect is accused of doing is truly horrible, bludgeoning her to death. In your opinion, what do you think happened in those final moments?
Like I said, this is an escalating. The violence was escalating. I guarantee it. And at one point in this last exchange, he went one step too far. One blow too many, and at that point now he panics and he goes into survival mode.
And does anything stand out to you that you believe that this was planned, or do you think the suspect just snapped in that moment?
Well, my understanding on this is she was riding with a friend in a car. He confronted both of them, threw the friend out of the car, and then took off in the car with her. Uh, that's a heat of the moment thing. There's a little bit of planning, but when you talk about how he disposed of the remains, it wasn't carefully thought out.
And is it significant to you at all that he allegedly chose to bury the victim in a shallow grave? Do you think he didn't do it to find her, or you think he did it to so that way authorities wouldn't find her body, or do you think he buried her for another reason?
I think he tried to buy himself some time. Obviously, he didn't have tools to bury her. I don't want to say properly because it's certainly not proper. But I think he just did it to buy himself some time. to create as much distance between himself and the scene of the crime as he could.
I want to give a big thank you to Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring today's Law and Crime YouTube takeover. Life truly can be so unpredictable, and if you're seriously injured, your case could be worth millions. Morgan & Morgan has more than 1,000 attorneys and a proven track record of huge wins. They recently secured verdicts of $12 million in Florida, $26 million in Philadelphia, and $6.8 million in New York, all exceeding other insurance offers. Even if your case isn't worth seven figures, why not start a claim and get the money you deserve? Starting a claim is super easy, and it takes just 8 clicks, and it can be all done from your phone. And guess what? You only pay Morgan & Morgan if you win. So if you're injured, visit forthepeople.com/YouTube takeover or click the link in the description and pin in the comments to start your claim today. And the suspect, Geovanni Otero, is now known as the most wanted man in Philadelphia. Do you think him fleeing is an obvious admission of guilt?
Yes, I think combination of him fleeing, he cut off ties with his parole officer. Um, yes, I mean yes, it's absolutely an admission of guilt in my opinion.
And talk to me a little bit about searching for a man who's been on the run now for more than a month. And where does the search go now for him from here?
So I don't know what his background is. I don't know what his ethnicity is. I don't know if he's of Mexican descent or if he's from Puerto Rican descent. I don't know, but you've got to think that he's heading somewhere else, obviously, um, out of the city. But to do that, he's going to need some help. Someone's got to be helping him. I don't know what kind of money he has, but he has to have access to funds, to shelter, to food. Somebody's helping him. It's just a matter of where he's trying to go.
And if you're, on the run, how important is cell phone data, possibly even social media going to be in order to help track him down?
It's huge. I mean, cell phone data, all the stuff you refer to. We talk about this all the time with the modern things that we have to do to track cell phones, towers, etc. It's huge. We use it all the time, and we also use these video cameras. There's video cameras everywhere. So the technology that's available now is it's huge, and I assure you that the Philadelphia Police Department, the Marshal Service, are using all of their tools, all their social media teams, um, and their telephone teams to try to find this guy.
And since we're living in such a digital age, I think a lot of people, when these types of things happen, I think their first question is always, why is it taking so long? If we do have, CCTV footage and surveillance video, possibly ring camera footage, cell phone data, why, in your opinion, do people always go to, why does it take so long? And talk to me about the level of this type of investigation when you are piecing together so many different types of clues and getting different evidence, either it being that cell phone data or video evidence or even talking to witnesses. But why do you think people always are confused as far as how long it takes to find someone when we have all this digital evidence in our disposal now?
Well, because on television programs, you got about 47 minutes, not including commercials or including commercials, to identify somebody, find them, and lock them up. And people get used to seeing stuff like that. They think it happens that fast. It just doesn't. It's a big world, and there's a lot of places that this guy could be going to. Also, if he has help, he doesn't really even have to show his face. If someone's bringing him stuff, trying to get him to move or hunkering down somewhere, it's really difficult sometimes. He's going to have to stick his head out. He's going to have to use one of those digital fingerprints that you're speaking of. And if he's not using them, it could take a while.
Does any part of you believe that he might possibly still even be in Philadelphia or the surrounding areas?
He could. He absolutely could. But like I said, if he's doing that, he's got some help. Um, I think, well, you got to remember he had about 30 days before they made the announcement that he's wanted for murder. Now, they did the parole violation warrant immediately, which is outstanding. We do it all the time. That lets other law enforcement entities know that, listen, if I stop a car with somebody in it, I don't know who's in it. I don't know what that person did. That person inside the car knows what they did. And this is a tool for officers to generally have an idea that, yep, this guy's wanted, and you could hold him on this parole warrant until they build their case and they execute the murder warrant, which they did.
And this is also a man who reportedly has been committing crimes since he was 12 years old. Because of that, how difficult could it be to find him? Or do you think, in a way, that could make things a lot easier?
Oh, I think the fact that he's covered in tattoos from head to toe makes it difficult for him to get lost. The lifestyle, the criminal lifestyle, it's like I said, it's all about self preservation at that point. They learned it in joint, they learned it on the streets. Um, I think that it makes him harder to track because he has a general idea of how the system works and how the police are going to come looking for him. But also, his criminal background is going to hinder him. He's not going to be able to move freely in society um, with all that paper on him.
And the US Marshals, they're offering a $5,000 reward. Do you think the reward is going to help in his capture?
I mean, if it's a really good friend or family member, 5,000 is not going to make you turn them in. I mean, money's nice, um, but if you're getting help from a family member or from a friend, uh, they're not thinking about that money. What they should be thinking about, and eventually it does happen, is how heinous the crime was, and how much do you really want to be involved with helping the person that is capable of committing that type of crime? Because if he did it to someone he loved, like his girlfriend, he's going to do it to anyone.
Yeah. And do you think that, because he's on the run, possibly, if there's that sense that authorities are closing in on him, do you think that things could possibly end in a terrible way, that he could go out and commit another crime? He could go out and hurt somebody else. Do you think that's all a possibility, especially as authorities are potentially and hopefully one day will close in on him?
There's no question they're going to get him. It's just a matter of where and when. And as the noose tightens, you're going to see some sort of out. He's going to commit crimes. Maybe he's going to carjack someone when he's trying to get away. Um, the thing I found kind of encouraging, not that there's any problem getting a gun on the street, is, and I don't want to say encouraging, it was a terrible way to phrase that, but he didn't use a weapon, as far as we know, as far as a firearm when he committed the murder. So could he get a gun? Absolutely, he can get a gun anywhere. Um, but at the time of the crime, it sounds like he did not have a firearm. So is there going to be a shootout at the end of this? It could be.
And how serious of charges could anybody who has helped him in this escape, in a way, be for them if they, once the suspect is eventually apprehended? I mean, even if it's somebody turning over a cell phone to him or something, as far as, like you had mentioned before, getting him food or even sheltering him, how serious of charges could they also face if authorities do learn that he did have help on the outside?
So they're felonies. They're felony charges for aiding and abetting. You're going to have to establish the fact that the person who's helping them knows that they were wanted and he was helping him escape, or giving aid to someone helping. Listen, it's all over the news. It's all over the Marshal Service. You'd be hard pressed to say, "Well, I didn't know what he was doing here. I was just trying to give him a hand." But they're felonies, and they will be prosecuted.
And say he is found potentially across state lines, across the country, or even in another country, is there that possibility that he could also face federal charges too?
We get the Federal Marshal Service looking for him. There's a warrant out for his arrest that's good anywhere in the United States. Some warrants are good in Mexico. Uh, the federal, I don't know what the federal jurisdiction is on this. Crossing state lines doesn't necessarily make it federal unless you're doing the crime, or you're taking someone across state lines. Um, but it could just be we do it all the time, extraditions. Somebody gets locked up in Florida, we extradite them back to the United, or to Illinois. So I don't know where the federal charges would come into this, but the murder warrant is good anywhere.
And of course, the victim and or the victim's family is pleading for him to be found. What's it like talking to victims, family members who just want a form of justice?
It's gut wrenching. It's very difficult. And again, like you said, time when you're in that situation as a family member, a day is a year. If your family member's gone that long, or you're trying to find someone who did something like this, a day is a year for them. It's an eternity. And everybody, like you said, everybody wants this to be taken care of quickly. especially the family members, and it's very difficult. I mean, they've already lost the person. Now, what are you going to do? What can you do to bring? I hate the word closure because I don't know even know what that means. But how do you give them a sense of justice? How do you give them some relief so they can try to heal? And what we do as homicide investigators is we try to bring him the offender to justice for them so they can move on and heal. It's very difficult to talk to people. You have to have empathy. You have to listen to people. Um, but it's very difficult, but it's hugely important.
Yeah, and of course, our thoughts are with the victim's family in this case. Will, I want to thank you so much for your time and your insight into this case as well. But before we sign you off, how long do you think it'll take for authorities to find Otero?
They're going to need a break. They're going to need a hit on the social media. They're going to need to tip. The money might help. I'm sure that you're going to see the money go up. Um, Someone's going to see him. I'm sure he's changed the way he looks, but someone's going to see him. I don't know that he has the means to stay hidden for too long. If he tries to cross any of our borders, there's a possibility that they're going to see him there. They're going to get him. And the farther we go out, time wise, the noose tightens. The people maybe don't want to help anymore. Maybe they want them out of your house. They'll get them. It's just a matter of they're going to need a break and they're going to need a little information.
All right, Will Spielar, again, thank you so much for your time and insight into this case. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anytime.
The city of Philadelphia is also offering a $20,000 reward for information leading to Geovanni Otero's arrest and conviction. Authorities consider Otero to be armed and dangerous, and the Philadelphia Police Department is asking anyone with information to give them a call. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.